The candidates for the presidency of Ecuador, Luisa González and Daniel Noboa, will culminate their campaign on Thursday ahead of the second round of elections on April the 13th. In the Dominican Republic on Thursday, people gathered to attend the mass wake for some of more than 200 people killed after the collapse of the jet-set nightclub roof. The government of China questioned the unilateral hegemonic protectionist approach exercised by the U.S. against the act of ships from the Asian giant subject to Trump tariffs. Hello and welcome to From the South. I'm Ana Marrera from the teleSUR headquarters in Caracas, Venezuela. We'll begin with the news. Stay with us. The candidates for the presidency of Ecuador, Luisa González and Daniel Noboa, will culminate their campaign this Thursday ahead of the second round of elections to be held next Sunday, April the 13th. Both candidates will make their last proselytist activities during this day before the 12 o'clock at night when the electoral silence kicks off. Both candidates choose Guayaquil for the closing events as a candidate of the Citizens' Revolution. Luisa González will be at the city from 15:30 local time together with her supporters for a big show and concert. On the other hand, the president and candidate for the governing party, Daniel Noboa, will carry out his last event in spite of not having requests to the National Assembly to the corresponding licenses to participate in the Proselytist Act. On the next last day of campaign, Citizens' Revolution candidate Luisa González gathered for her followers in Quito for her campaign closing. During the day, González mentioned that she has the support of more than 75 organizations. She also said that she will build a university in the south of the capital and will provide funds for the expansion of the Quito subway. For his part, candidate Daniel Noboa made a speech at the same city and emphasized that a possible new presidential term will continue with the objective of ending the mafia's aim at ongoing social crisis and political and environmental violence. Argentina's labor union began on Thursday a 24-hour general strike against the adjustment policies implemented by the government of Javier Milei. The strike, promoted by the union that makes up the General Confederation of Labor, the CGT, continues a protest action against the budget cuts and other starvation measures of the Milei administration. During the ninth summit of the Community of Latin American Caribbean States in Tegucigalpa, capital of Honduras, Colombia assumed the presidency of the organization for the period 2025-2026. Petro at the closing of the ceremony that he will work on the strategy towards Haiti and its democratic strengthening and the concrete overcoming of the blockades imposed on Cuba and Venezuela. The new president of SALAD acknowledged that what follows will be stormy months, but then clarified that storms are always good because they lead to the poor faster than before. For this reason, he has SALAD and the regions to act in unity. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum assured on Thursday that her proposal at the 9th Select Summit yesterday was well received and that she will continue to advocate for the integration of the continent.
Mexico is one of the countries that has the most free trade agreements. And in some things it is good and in other things not so good. Because as we have said, we also import many things that could be produced here in Mexico. But which is the region we have to address that is closer in all senses? Culturally, historically, regionally, since it is part of the continent, it is Latin America and the Caribbean.
In the Dominican Republic, the number of fatalities caused by the collapse of the roof of the Jet Set nightclub rose to 221. The families of the missing people denounced a lack of transparency and negligence in the identification process. It should be noted that more than 300 rescuers continue working and providing constant medical support. Also, in a gesture of solidarity, a brigade from Puerto Rico joined in work in the field. In this regard, the Dominican government called on the population and the media to avoid disseminating unconfirmed information so as not to generate confusions or increase the pain of those affected. In the Dominican Republic on Thursday, people gathered to attend a mass wake from some of the more than 200 people killed after the collapse of the Jet Set nightclub. Funeral services also started for merengue singer Ruby Perez, who was performing at the site and is among the photo victims of the tragedy. The posthumous act of the artist was held at the Eduardo Brito National Theater in the capital, Santo Domingo, with the attendance of President Luis Abinader, in addition to Perez's families and several prominent figures of the musical industry who gathered to be the farewells to the highest boss of merengue, as he was known. Let's take a very first break, but remember you can join us on our TikTok account as teleSUR English, where you'll be able to see news in different formats, news updates and more. Stay tuned for more news. Welcome back to From the South. The government of China questioned the unilateral hegemonic protectionist approach exercised by the U.S. against the tide of ships from the Asian and subject to Trump tariffs. Chinese Foreign Minister spokesman Li Jian said that Washington is using tariff judgments to curb Beijing's dominance in the international shipping industry. The foreign minister said such measures will increase the cost of global shipping, which will awaken production and supply chains in all nations of the world. Li Jian also added that Washington blames Beijing for its failures in the shipping industry as a statement that lacks of factual basis and contradicts economic common sense. On Thursday, the Chinese Foreign Minister once again warned that the tariff imposed by the U.S. threatens the entire world and damages the multilateral trade system.
The U.S., for its own selfish reasons, has used tariffs as a weapon to exert extreme pressure and seek selfish gains, which has seriously infringed upon the legitimate rights and interests of all countries, seriously violated the rules of the World Trade Organization, seriously damaged the rules-based multilateral trading system, and seriously impacted the stability of the global economic order. This is a blatant act that goes against the will of the world and goes against the whole world.
Meanwhile, China's Ministry of Commerce was stressing that pressure and threats from Donald Trump's administration are not the right way to negotiate with Beijing.
The position of the Chinese side is clear and consistent. The door to dialogue is open, but it must be based on mutual respect and conducted in an equal manner. If the U.S. chooses to engage in confrontation, China will fight to the end. Pressure, threats, and blackmail are not the correct way to engage with China. We hope the U.S. will meet China halfway, and, based on the principles of mutual respect, peaceful coexistence, and win-win cooperation, properly resolve differences through dialogue and consultation.
In Malaysia, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, ASEAN, highlighted to avoid in countermeasures ahead of the U.S. reciprocal tariff. At the end of the meeting of Asian ministers and central bank governors in Kuala Lumpur, participants detailed that retaliation is not an option. They further stressed the need to continue at a straightforward and constructive dialogue with the U.S. to settle trade dispute and build up a balanced and sustainable relation. This comes after Washington's announced on Thursday the decision to pause for 90 days the non-reciprocal tariffs, which earlier U.S. President Trump had stated they'd enact as of April the 9th the dozens of countries.
Of course, I would say Alhamdulillah, at least for now, there's a temporary reprieve. But at the same time, there is a very strong, hardened position vis-à-vis China, which is also a problem to us, because it will impact our economy, in a way.
ASEAN reaffirms its continued commitment to open, inclusive, and rule-based multilateral trading systems. We stand ready to work constructively with all partners, including the United States, to find balanced, forward-looking solutions that support a more resilient and sustainable global economy.
With that, we'll share with you the talking points and the joint statement for AFMGM 2025.
The New Zealand Parliament voted down on Thursday the controversial Treaty Principles Bill, which sparks nationwide protests as it sought the radical reinterpretive and treaty between indigenous Maori tribes and the British Crown. Precisely 112 lawmakers opposed the bill and only 11 voted in favor, ending a month-long fight for indigenous rights. The potential passing of the principles bills tabled by the minor Libertarian Act Party triggered New Zealand's largest ever protest on Maori rights and launched 300,000 public submissions. The 1940 Treaty of Waitangi is considered the country's founding document and is instrumental in upholding the rights of indigenous people in the nation.
Koutou katoa. Mr. Speaker, normally when I rise in this House to speak on a bill, I say it's a great privilege to speak on the bill. That is not the case today. This is a grubby little bill, born of a grubby little deal. It has had a colossal impact on the fabric of our nation, and this bill will forever be a stain on our country. But, Mr. Speaker, what I do take pride in is the way New Zealanders have come together over the last 6 months to say loud and clear, this is not us. This is not Aotearoa New Zealand.
Let's take a last break, but before we invite you to visit our Facebook page, teleSUR English. There you'll be able to watch our top stories, special live coverage, and much more. Follow our page and activate the notification button to stay up to date on the most recent events. We'll financial breakdown go away. Welcome back. The Palestinian population continues suffering from Israel's genocidal campaign against the Gaza Strip. In the last 24 hours, at least 38 people were killed by the intense bombing of the occupying army. The Israeli warplanes struck residential buildings in the Suhayad neighborhood east of the city of Gaza on Wednesday, leaving at least 30 Palestinian deaths, including children. The bombing also left around 55 injured and 80 people missing under the debris. On the other hand, Israeli troops continue to demolish homes in southern Gaza under the heavy artillery and a machine gun cover. According to the Palestinian Health Ministry, 50,146 people have been killed and more than 115,000 wounded since the beginning of the Israeli genocidal campaign against the Gaza Strip on October 7, 2023. As the Israeli regime continues the siege of the Gaza Strip, 60,000 Palestinian children starve, according to the Ministry of Health in the Palestinian territory. Since March the 2nd, the Israeli regime has closed off all crossing into Gaza and blocked the entry of essential supplies, including food, medicine, and water. The Health Ministry has warned that the lack of adequate nutrition and drinking water will compound health challenges with a campaign ban of vaccination for children, specifically polio vaccinations. According to the UN Relief and Work Agency for the Palestinian refugees, UNRWA, Israel's ongoing siege of the region has had a devastating impact on children in the enclave. In France, the President Emmanuel Macron advanced on Wednesday that his government would recognize Palestine as a state in the upcoming UN conference in New York in June this year. President Macron granted to be committed to collective regional security. In this regard, the leader argued his nation was willing to be part of a collective dynamics. However, he made clear that his stance against those nations, namely Iran, that do not recognize Israel. A new round of negotiations between the Russian and U.S. delegations began in the Turkish city of Istanbul. The meeting between the Russian and U.S. delegates held behind closed doors at the Russian Consulate General in Istanbul focused on issues related to the functioning of the two countries' diplomatic representations. Russian ambassador to Washington, Alexander Darshev, headed the Russian delegation, while the U.S. team was led by Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for Russia and Central Europe, Sonata Coulthard. The first negotiations between the two countries in Istanbul took place on February the 27th of this year, which Moscow described as substantial and businesslike. The North Atlantic Treaty Organization, military Ramstein-Slack 2025 exercise is expected to finish on April 11 with the participation of some 100 aircraft and 18 allied nations, which have been in operations across Northern Europe. The NATO Allied Air Command and the Royal Netherlands Air Forces have led this multinational air military operation that started on March the 31st. European heads assured this tactical training exercise are aimed at strengthening multi-domain operation interoperability and rapid response capabilities among allied forces. We have come to the end of this news brief, but you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on our socials, we're on Facebook, on X, and on Instagram as well. For teleSUR English and from the South, I'm Ana Marrero. Thank you for watching.